This morning we begin our annual series we call Bending the Arc. It's drawn from a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which he in turn drew from the words of one of our Unitarian ancestors, the 19th century abolitionist Theodore Parker. The arc of the moral universe is long, Dr. King said, but it bends towards justice. And so it is that each year on Martin Luther King Sunday, we take a look at our own part in bending the arc of justice just a little closer towards completion in our time. Y'all remember the old story from the Hebrew scriptures about David and Goliath? Now, as the story goes in the first book of Samuel, Goliath was a giant warrior, some 9 feet tall. The entire Israelite army was afraid to do battle with him. So he sent a message that they should send someone to represent their army if there was one so brave. No one had ever defeated him. Everyone was sorrowful and afraid that the Philistine army would rule them forever. And then a little boy named David, teenager, raised up his hand and said, "I'll do it." Well, they gathered up some armor for him, and he said, "No, don't need that armor. No armor can succeed against so fierce a foe as the giant Goliath. It will only slow me down." Instead, he went down to the river and he gathered up 5 smooth stones, put them in a little bag with a sling, the early version of a slingshot. People still use those kind, that just do this, not this kind. He gathered up his stones and his slings, and he went to face Goliath. Now, as David approached with nothing but his little bag, with his little sling and his 5 smooth stones, Goliath began to laugh. While Goliath laughed, little David focused all his mind and all his might and all his strength in the truth of his faith. And he loaded up that sling and let those stones fly, one after the other, until one caught Goliath smack in the forehead and knocked him out. The Israelites went on to reclaim their land, and they made young David their king. What can this story teach us as Unitarian Universalists? There are many teachings in this one story. But one of my favorites was given by one of my favorite UU theologians, James Luther Adams, in the mid-20th century, when he used this story to teach us his 5 smooth stones of liberal religion, that we might more freely and responsible live this faith that we share. A little bit later, a couple of my colleagues, the Reverends Nancy Bowen and Mike Moran, took James Luther Adams' 5 smooth stones and taught it afresh as the 5 jagged rocks of liberal religion. Now, the 5 smooth stones begins with this first one, that truth is not sealed, that revelation continues to be revealed, that nothing is set in stone. When my colleagues updated it to 5 jagged rocks, they did so under the understanding that this faith of ours is not always easy, that it's sometimes actually quite risky and can sometimes feel rather dangerous and is not always smooth going when we try to live this faith in this world out loud. Now, there have been times it has felt smoother. This is not one of those, which only goes to continue to teach us that the work is not done, and truth continues to come again and again until we answer. Now, the 5 jagged rocks of Unitarian Universalism follow Adams's 5 smooth stones. We're going to explore these 5 jagged rocks across the coming weeks here at River Press. This first one, truth continues to be revealed. will be followed by the second one, all souls are sacred and worthy, which will be followed by courageous love that transforms the world, salvation in this lifetime, and that there is a unity that holds all. This morning, the first jagged rock. The truth continues to be revealed, and revelation is not sealed. That's good news, right? That's good news, right? That's good news, that all that needs to be discovered has not been already discovered. That all that needs to be said has not already been said. That all that needs to be known by us is not already known. That all that we need to know about who we are is also not known. Good news that poetry and music and art and science and philosophy and logic and mathematics, all the ways that we discover truth in this earthly life, are not over. They're not done. There is more to be discovered. There is more to be revealed. It is good news that even the scriptures that we inherit are not themselves the last word on how we live our lives, no matter how some people say so. Those two have yet to offer us things we don't understand, because truth continues to be revealed. And so all those folks who insist that they know what God by any name meant by every chapter and verse, those are the folks I grew up with, maybe some of y'all too. We kindly listen. We thank them for loving us enough to share their truth with us. And then we go along our own faith journey day by day, living the kind of love we can only hope others will. What good news that truth can never be locked in, locked up, or locked down by any one person, any one way of living, or loving, or thinking, or believing. What good news that truth is never finished. But wait a minute. If truth is never finished, that means truth is never finished with us. That truth continues to work on us from the outside in and the inside out. It means we might not know what we think we know. It means sometimes that just when we think we've got a clue what's happening, everything shifts, and we have to learn it again. It means we can't carry on like everything's just fine, and we know it's not. We know we're not. And that's what makes this smooth stone of truth into a jagged rock risky. More difficult to do than we thought when we set out. No sooner do I make a declarative statement of what has to be the ultimate truth about something or another than some jagged rock catches me, and I have to think again. Our fourth Unitarian Universalist principle asks us to promise to uphold and affirm a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It doesn't promise that what we find will hold still. Here, let me take a selfie with my truth. It's going to change. How often we underscore the first part of this phrase, free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We underscore that first part. Free search for truth and meaning. Free. I get to do what I want. Uh-oh, wait a minute. There's a second part of that phrase, responsible. So maybe I don't get to do everything I want, because my free search must also be responsible to those I travel with, in my family, in this congregation. It also must be responsible to myself as I change and I learn and I grow and I find out that the truth that fit me just yesterday doesn't fit so well today. And goodness gracious, when that piece of truth comes from somebody I didn't expect, from somebody I'm ready to denounce and say they don't know, and then some truth comes from them that makes me go, oh wait. This morning I also want to think about what it means not only to be responsible for our search, our truth, but to be responsible to the truth we find. It's not enough to find it. We must be responsible to what we find. We must consider what the truth we find asks of us in the lives that we live as people of faith. Truth that will not let us look away. Truth that opens our hearts and our minds and makes us open our mouths, even when it frightens us. Viola Liuzzo was scared, but she came when Dr. King called. Truth demands that we ourselves change if we would change this world. Truth continues to try to find us, even when we are not looking. How do we recognize truth when we see it? What might be some of the signs that a higher and nobler and maybe harder truth is calling out to us, begging us to rise up and to speak up and to show up in the name of love, no matter what giants are before us? For me, one sign for myself is a creeping inability to get comfortable. An inability to look in any other direction from the hurt and the harm done to our neighbors. And don't you know when I say, okay, I'm not even going to look at this today, it pops up right here. And when I say, okay, that's for another day, it pops up right here. Because the truth is asking me to be accountable, because I said I would. The inability to disregard the threats to our liberty, the harm done to our neighbors, the words and deeds that fly in the face of basic human decency, that ignore the commandment that in every tradition to love our neighbors as ourselves, to respect the stranger, the refugee, the poor, the wounded, the suffering, to offer our lives into theirs, that they might know comfort and abundance. And likewise, I'm also called not only to point out the stuff that looks like it needs fixing, I'm also called to spotlight the stuff that's good. To spotlight the people that are doing good things, to spotlight those that are out there making the world a better place, but they never make the news. To look at all those courageous, miraculous, open-handed, and open-hearted people doing miracles every day in spite of it all. All around us there are signs that truth is calling us right this minute to live this faith more responsibly, calling to the David in each of us to deal with our Goliath. The fact that all around us people are doing it even while Goliath laughs gives us signs. The fact that Broward County bureaucrats tried to make it illegal to feed the hungry and homeless in our public parks, that's a sign of work that needs to be done. And the fact that there are people out there doing it anyway, even getting arrested, that's a sign too. The fact that the rumblings of unwinnable war are rising around us again, that's a sign. and that people are rising to those rumblings and saying no more war, that's a sign too. The fact that there are people in positions of great power who cannot seem to even say good morning without lying, that's a sign. And the fact that there are people everywhere telling the truth anyway, reminding us that 2 + 2 is indeed still 4, and that facts matter, that's a sign too. The glaciers melting is a sign. And so is the courage and testimony of Greta Thunberg and the other youth activists refusing to accept the destruction of Earth's climate as inevitable. White supremacists marching in our streets in broad daylight, that's a sign. And so are the people marching in the other direction, refusing to answer hate with hate and violence with violence. That people still use their religion as weapons against those hanging on for dear life at the margins of our society, that's a sign. And people like you that are here this morning, this minute, you are the best sign of all. That the Davids of this world don't quit. The fact that none of the issues we face right now, right here in this minute, are new to humanity in the slightest. Note our prelude song, Abraham, Martin, and John, and then we had to add a verse for Bobby, and we could unfortunately make that song go on and on and on. It only shows that people have been doing this work time immemorial. It's just our turn. Do we really think we were going to get away with just everything continually seeming to improve? Well, there were those around us saying, hey folks, it's not all improving. And when it started to look like the wheels were going to come off, and a lot of privileged people said, oh man, what happened? And the marginalized among us said, hello? Where have you been? This is nothing new. It's just our turn. Because truth is never finished. And truth is never finished with us. And so it is that in every generation, good people refuse to quit trying to make this world and to make us better. Good people refuse to let go of hope. Good people refuse to give up on love. Good people, again and again and again and again and again, just keep following that voice of truth, learning it and learning it again as it grows and deepens and changes us as we stretch to grab a hold of that arc of the universe. Pull it just a little closer towards justice in our place and in our time. So you see, everybody thought that Goliath was too big to fight. David, he thought Goliath was too big to miss. When you see a sister lost and confused, you gotta tell somebody, tell somebody. When you see your brother broken and bruised, you gotta tell somebody, tell somebody. When you see big talkers twisting the truth, you gotta tell somebody. you see the system failing our youth, you gotta tell somebody. Tell somebody. When you see the truth sees you, and you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. You gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. When you see how we're living poisons the earth, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. You see the rich man's hand in the poor man's purse, you gotta tell somebody. You gotta tell somebody. When you see how we're living is making us sick, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. When Viagra gets fast track, but not RU486, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. Oh, when you see the truth sees you, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. Oh, nothing gets better if good people stand by, just shaking their heads and counting tears that they cry. You gotta say what you see, you gotta say it out loud, you gotta open your heart, you gotta open your mouth. But you know, we're not only responsible for saying what's wrong, we're also responsible for saying what's right. When you see the horizon filling with light, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. And you see good people turning wrong into right, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. When you find a way free in spirit and thought, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. You gotta roll, you gotta walk, you gotta talk that talk, you gotta tell somebody. Gotta tell somebody. When you see the truth sees you. When you see the truth sees you. When you see the truth sees you. And you gotta tell somebody. Tell somebody. What you gotta do? You gotta tell somebody. Tell somebody. You gotta tell somebody. Tell somebody. You gotta 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 tell somebody, and then you gotta grab somebody's hand and say, we're gonna do this together. And then we're gonna lift it up and we're gonna ask for how best it should be done. And not presume that we know. Be open to being taught.